my tricks here and to get on the merry-go-round that's going 100 miles an hour with these girls because they're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
David, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have one. I thought I enjoyed your portrayal of Les Sweeney very much. So my question is, how, if you were in charge, how would you write him?
Well, so Les, this is going back 10 years on As the World Turns for those that don't know who this character is. And Les started out as this guy. This was one of those non-contract roles starting out. That was like 10 shows. And what I really liked about Chris Galman was the producer at that time of As the World Turns, and I had screen tested for one or two after Jake. I did Jake. I kind of stepped out of soaps for a while, and then As the World Turns was my first kind of screen test again to go back into soaps, and there was there were kind of like lead romantic characters, and I was never really. Jake Martin was kind of a
he was a nice guy.
He was a nice guy. He was a nice guy that after a while you just don't. You wanted, nice guys can do bad things. I always would tell the producers that. I said, the nice guy can do bad things. He can have flaws and he can make mistakes and he can, but I just was never allowed to play. That just wasn't part of Jake's. At least when I was there. So by the time I wasn't really interested in playing those kind of characters again, and so I guess because I didn't get the first couple of screen I don't know what the roles were As the World Turns, but then Galman just kind of offered me this part of Les Sweeney, and he might have seen some kind of weird twisted look in my eye because Les was not. Well, the first problem was Les Sweeney. The name itself, obviously, it's like a friend of mine from Oregon said, yeah, it's like when you prank call a bowling alley and you ask for Les Sweeney.
Yeah.
They said, can we rename him like Les Johnson or something, Les McSweeney or something besides? I get it, I get he's maybe has a small package. All right, he was just kind of a dweeb and a ne'er-do-well, and he had a son that he beat, and he was just kind of a scumbag. And but it was for me to be able to play that kind of character after Jake Martin was just I absolutely loved it, and it was a lot of fun. And Ken Schreiner was on the show at the time, and so it was just a really fun soap job. I always said if I had a fun character playing a soap opera, I'd love to work on soap operas. And so Les got extended from 10 shows. He came back after a couple months and played out for, I don't know, better part of a year of just all those shenanigans. But then he started doing things that I was like, there's no way I'm going to survive this. When I assaulted more or less character, and when you do bad things to the main woman on the show that everybody loves, your days are numbered.
Yeah.
And but as far as your original question, Dave, I think that I felt that you could keep a guy like him around, just a bad guy. You know that arc basically. You have a disgusting, terrible person, and then they do nice things here and there, like Todd on One Life to Live. He was a rapist at first, and then he became that if that's acceptable, anything is, and so I thought there was room. I thought I was kind of hoping for Les's nice twin from Texas to come back into town and say, what happened to my brother Les, and to have some kind of story go that direction. But I couldn't rewrite it any other way. He was just doing a lot of fun stuff, and I was hoping that it would continue. But it went long enough, I think, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, it gave you a different type of role to play, and I think that's what keeps you guys excited about, getting another role.
Yeah,
Not play the same person over and over and over, no matter what you're on. That would be boring.
Yeah, and have a producer kind of accept, like I said, Chris Galvin was the executive producer, and to accept, I said, I'm going to kind of, because I started off, Lester was not a Southern guy. I kind of played him straight, and then when I went back, I want to do something interesting, so I made him kind of from Texas, and so I switched up the accent and stuff, and Chris was fine with it, and we just can kind of do whatever I want. It was really neat to be there and to kind of be creative in ways that aren't on the page. And it was really neat to work out. I liked working out in Brooklyn at those old studios, and it's funny because when we did Tainted Dreams recently in August, we worked in that studio, the As the World Turns studio.
Oh, wow.
So it was neat to go back there, and it's kind of like, it was weird because it's like, you got a sense that somebody left there really quickly.
Yeah.
There's like it was ghostly. I mean, the TVs were removed, and there was kind of wires hanging out of the wall, and it was just empty. Yet, there's a few, you could see signs of the way things used to be, like stickers of character names here and there, and so it was like I could, honestly, I never in a million years thought that I would go back and work in that studio, and so it was kind of neat to revisit that place. That studio also has some interesting history. They did the Bill Cosby show there, and they did all those Esther Williams movies there, the swimming movies.
Oh my gosh!
She's in the pool, and they say that the pool is still there, that the stage covers the pool. And I couldn't find it. I was looking for it. I was kind of knocking on the stage here and there, but because that was on their website they claim that the stage covers the old pool, but I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe they filled it in with concrete or something. But
they could have,
it was. But it's an interesting place, and so it was good to go back there and work, revisit the old As the World Turns studio.
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to your old high school or your old neighborhood or something, and checking it out and reliving memories and making new memories if you're there long enough. So that's a good thing. I know some of my old neighborhoods I wouldn't go to now, but
Really?
Yeah, well, you got to remember, I live right now. I live in a suburb of Chicago, but I grew up in Chicago, and in certain areas you just don't want to go
on
into.
The other way. You would think they would have become improved. So you're saying they've disintegrated over the years?
Yeah. I mean, there has been some areas that have improved, where they had, oh gosh, what did they call it? I mean, you talk about like the worst place in the world to live. I can't even think of what they called it. But anyway, they just recently, over probably the past 5, 6, 7 years, they redid it, and now it's all nice and condos and things like that. So, they're doing it slow but sure. But
right.
It just, in my neighborhood itself, no, it still needs to be better. Where I used to live.
Okay. Well, what can we do here? I mean, we need to step up the game there.
Well, it has a lot to do with gangs.
Yeah. So are they shifting out of other areas? Are they being pushed from gentrified areas? I mean, that's happening. I know that's happening in Nashville right now, in East Nashville. That used to be a really tough area, and it still is to a degree. But they're pushing kind of the gang elements and farther north, and so some areas are now that maybe weren't so troubled are becoming troubled because from gentrification, ironically.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of that, but then again, when I lived there was some gangs. It just wasn't as bad as what it is now with, drive-by shootings and all the innocent people that are getting killed and the kids that are getting killed and injured and stuff like that. You don't want to walk down the street because you're afraid that somebody's going to shoot at somebody else, another gang member, and you're the one that's going to get it. So that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's just that they've become more out in the open and more daring and, with no remorse and don't care what happens to anybody else. So, and that says a lot about society.
It does, and I think it's going. It's hard to hear that because it seemed like that was that you're describing when I moved to Los Angeles in 1990-91, I mean, it was the OK Corral anywhere in Los Angeles. The violence could explode anywhere in Venice, Santa Monica, not just South Los Angeles, but areas of the Valley. The gang, violence was crazy. I mean, it really, but and much like how New York was cleaned up in the same period of time, it really was for various reasons. You had public policy that was changing, but also just money coming in. People had more money to invest in communities, and so certainly in Los Angeles it feels a lot safer. But I do think that there does seem to be a resurgence of, like you said, daring, blatant, outrageous violence in broad daylight that affects unintended parties, and I'm not sure if that's. I don't know what that's from. I don't know if I know in New York they're getting worried about Bloomberg leaving, and he initially had Giuliani who had the iron fist and really changed things in some cases, using methods that were not agreeable, but for the net result for the better. And then Bloomberg has sustained that and imposed his own kind of righteous measures. But now they're all worried that once he leaves, and the candidates for mayor, that things are, I know they're having issues with law enforcement in terms of hamstringing the stop and frisk, and people are worried that, it's always that tension between, constitutional rights and
Right.
And lawlessness, and how far you can go, but it's back in it's certainly palpable in New York especially, and I've noticed here in Los Angeles too. It seems to be veering back into kind of scary. You feel a little more vulnerable than you have in years past. I'm not really. There's probably a variety of reasons, but it's unsettling.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that's helping a lot of these different towns is that these communities are fed up with, their children dying, and they're coming together and they're marching and they're speaking out, and they're going to their aldermen, and they're going to their police, and they're going to, whoever they have to go to, and they're coming together as communities and working on it. And I see that that's starting to make a change. I mean, it's not leaps and bounds, of course, but it's a start. And if everybody sticks together, you can eventually do something about it.
Yeah. It's it's a recognition that there's problems. Either they're resurfacing or they still exist, and there's a kind of a critical mass of that mobilizes communities, and that's where it makes the difference, certainly.
Right, exactly.
We've
kept you for an hour and a half over here. I did want to touch on one other thing, though, before I let you go, and because I thought it was so funny. I was researching last night and found a video of you.
Wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Playing Chomsky and Dick.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's actually that's living out a childhood fantasy.
Oh my God, that was so funny, and you actually wore that sweater like Starsky used to wear it. I mean, that was hysterical.
Yeah, I have that. That sweater is mine. I own that. So to kind of, I'm a huge Starsky and Hutch fan, and And I met one of my best friends. Actually, I had dinner with him last night, who played Hutch in that video. Austin Smithard. He's a very good friend of mine. He's English, and Starsky and Hutch was a big show here in the late 70s. It's kind of been forgotten, except for the Ben Stiller movie came on, kind of it reinvigorated some interest, but for the most part, people don't. People know Charlie's Angels and Love Boat. Starsky and Hutch is, for some reason, it's just a little more off the beaten path, and yet, when I was 10 years old. That was a huge television show.
Loved it, never missed it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And England, though, it's had some legs. It was huge over there in the 70s, but it sustained itself in popularity. David Soul and actually lives over there. And he's taken advantage of it and works out over there. And Paul Michael Gray, they're still huge stars in England. And not so here, and
right.